All right, so we are going to talk through the King Crimson song, Three of a Perfect Pair. Frame by frame. My brain's not working tonight, I guess. And I'm going to be leaning on the transcription, the official, I guess, King Crimson transcription from this awesome book, the King Crimson Discipline Era Transcriptions. And I'm proud of this because I was one of the 3 proofreaders on the book, and worked with Trey Gunn and Gabriel Riccio, who did most of the transcription and tablature work. So you can get this occasionally on Trey's 7D Media. That's the number 7, the letter D, Media, on his Bandcamp. So look up 7D Media on Bandcamp. And sometimes this book is in print. When you watch this, I don't know how long into the future, it might be available for you to purchase. So I highly recommend it. It is literally every single part from every single song on the 1980s albums, Discipline, Beat, and Three of a Perfect Pair. So I'm going to be leaning on the frame-by-frame transcription in this book. So this song's kind of famous for being, for Robert Fripp's like really fast intro part that I played a little bit of, and then there's this really cool riff that goes into like phasing, and we'll talk a little about what that means. But I got a comment on Instagram, and someone asked if I could help them play the song, and I was like, well, maybe I'll just make a video. And here we are. The song is actually conceptually simple. It's not particularly complicated. It's hard to play, but from a like construction standpoint, it's not that complicated. So we'll start with Adrian's part for the intro, and it goes like this. And that's like playing an F7 and then the sus4 here. But you're going to have an E in the bass. Let that ring open. That's hard to hear on the transcription, and some people I see playing it on YouTube don't actually catch that open E, but there is an open E. Cool? All right, and then a lot of King Crimson music does this. It goes up a minor third. So and then it goes up to like a C7 sus shape, but it omits the root, and so you're really only playing the first 4 strings. Okay, so on the first chord, so you've got these 4 chords going on. Okay, and then Robert plays this minor pentatonic kind of lick over it, just constant 16th notes. So over the first chord he plays. It's very simple, but because it's so fast, I think we transcribed, the tempo is 157 beats per minute on the original recording, which is pretty quick. But really, it's not yes, the right hand is a challenge, because you're playing it so fast. It's a bit of a meditation to do this, but honestly, the biggest trouble I have with it is I get tension. It's like it starts heating up here, and it gets uncomfortable. And Robert just goes. And sometimes when I try playing through this, I'm like, okay, just relax. You know, in my head, I'm thinking, relax. And sometimes I can play through it, and sometimes I can't. It's kind of like with Fracture. You really have to be in the right state of mind. I mean, for people who criticize Robert for not wanting photos while he's playing on stage, I don't think they've really tried playing much of his music, because it's really hard to do this with any distractions. And I imagine live they played it, you know, kind of out of control with tempos and stuff. So anyway, so Robert is doing this over this first chord. So Adrian is like, he's playing in, we have it notated that he's playing in 4/4, and Robert's playing in 12/16. So it's just this pattern that repeats. And you know that it's, that you're playing it right when you hear the rhythm part in 4/4, and it feels like you're playing in like dotted eighths. So you can kind of feel the pulse of what you're playing over it. And as you practice, you get a sense of what you're doing wrong. So then when they move up to that E chord, Robert moves the same riff up a minor third. And then when we go to that like C sus, he plays it instead. He'll move up another 3 frets, but he doesn't change strings like Adrian does. He just stays on the 5th string. And then he moves up 1 fret. And then it goes down to the riff. And this is the famous like phasing riff, okay? And we say it's phasing because in minimalist music, there's a lot of like minimalist influences in this song, like Steve Reich or Reich. I'm not sure. I've been corrected both ways. Reich. And Philip Glass, like Koyana Scottsy type stuff. There's a lot of like motifs that are one is in like 5 and the other is in 7. Robert does this with the song Thrack as well. The first 5 notes of the riff in 7 align with the first 5 notes of the riff in 5. And so the longer you play it, you realize there's a cycle going on that repeats. So it's like when you have 5 and 7, every 7 measures of 5, you're back in alignment. And every 5 measures of 7, you're back in alignment. So it's a little bit tricky. Adrian plays the whole frame by frame riff straight, because he sings over it. Frame by frame, death by drowning. And then that riff changes like this. So it's this constant 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Adrian is constantly playing in 7. Robert throws it off a bit. So he plays So he does 3 bars of 7 and then 1 bar of 3, 4. So that's how we get this sort of phasing effect. And let me try looping that. Robert. Whoops. So you can kind of get a sense of that if I was better at looping. I just got this quad cortex thing, and it's really awesome, but I need to figure out how to actually use it. So anyway, Adrian just plays. And every 4 measures, or actually every 3 measures, Robert cuts 1 beat out. when he cuts one out, it takes I guess 6 or 7 repetitions for him and Adrian to be back in lockstep, and then they play in unison, including the. So they go back into that. Of course, they move it up a minor third. So it's really just the same riff. And then Robert plays some other kind of rhythm-ish kinds of things. Okay, so it's just like a major 7 chord. Except I think he lets the notes ring, and it does say that, so. And then he goes down. And then they go straight back into the beginning. And back to the crazy. And it's all meditative, whatever. And that is pretty much the whole song. Except at the end, Robert goes back to cutting the. And then, at the end, he does this minor pentatonic riff. So, or maybe it's just, yeah, it's just that. I think live, though, he does this. I could be wrong, and I often am. Either way, if you just play a bunch of times, and if you're playing with another person, this gets tough because you kind of both have to lock in and sync. And even on the studio recording, Robert doesn't, that little riff, he doesn't play it consistently. He just ends at the same time as Adrian, and the ending is much more important than the accuracy of, that pattern in particular. You don't want to like end on different notes. You want to end at the same time. It doesn't even really matter if you're playing any of those 3 notes. It just matters that you end at the same time. So another couple things about the picking of this. Robert is known for his alternate picking capabilities. And so this riff, that's all just alternate picking. So it's tough, but it's the same thing over and over and over. Like I said, you have to get into like a meditative state to do it well. But then in the other riff, that 1 and 7, you can play it fully alternate picking, but I don't recommend it. It gets a little confusing, and it's already confusing enough in the first place. And the first time you play that C sharp, it's on a downstroke. The second time would be on an upstroke if you just stick with the constant down-up picking. So what I end up doing is, so I just do down, 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 up, down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, down, up. So that keeps the picking to sound consistent as well. If you're asking, how do I play frame by frame? chances are your picking is not as consistent on the upstroke and the downstroke, because people who really spend a lot of time studying picking have probably come across Robert's stuff and understand how picky he is. So Robert plays pointy picks, sharp picks. I have some of his picks over there, but if you really want to know more about the picks, like I have a series called Failure to Fracture on the channel, which is all about playing the King Crimson song Fracture, which is notoriously difficult. In fact, Robert says it's impossible to play, and I spent like 20 some years working on it and finally getting to play it. So anyway, there's that whole series on the channel. But you want to play this, Adrian doesn't play with sharp picks, and you can hear the difference between the two of them and their picking and playing. So if you want to play the Robert part, I highly recommend getting a sharp pick. This is a Dunlop Tortex Sharp 0.7 whatever millimeter, and it's a good pick. I really like it. But Robert's picks are great too. But you can't buy a Robert Fripp pick unless you've been to a Robert Fripp guitar course. And these are very readily available at most any guitar shop. So that's about it. If you have any questions about playing frame by frame, leave them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. But otherwise, like I said, it's a pretty simple song. And the cool thing about that phasing thing is when you cut out the beat, one beat out at 1/8 note, when Adrian's playing 7, so it sounds really cool. You're basically phasing this motif, and then eventually it lines right back up, and that sounds really awesome, especially with two guitars. So recommend getting another guitarist and trying to play this song, and don't just attempt it at full tempo right away, especially if you're playing Robert's part. This is going to take a lot of time and a lot of practice if you really want to nail it. Whatever it is. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this, and let me know if you want to see more songs from the Discipline Era Transcriptions book. Cool. Thanks.